Hey guys, so Thanksgiving week, doing a review outside because it's nice. Sitting here in my backyard, kids are inside playing. I didn't want to bother them, so went ahead and I'm going to do the review out here. I'm hoping this is a cool change of pace, change of setting. So I read this book not long after getting back from Colorado. We actually went and visited the hotel that this book was based on, the Stanley Hotel. So The Shining is a book about a hotel that doesn't want you to leave and the slow descent into madness that this haunted hotel takes you down. This is a story about three people, really. There are other people in the story, but really it focuses on these three people. You've got Jack Torrance, the father and husband. You've got Wendy, his wife, and Danny Torrance, his son, his 5-year-old son, who has a little bit of prescience where he's able to it's called shining. That's really what it is. Danny can shine, and that's the premise of why the hotel is so interested in this family, and why the hotel wants them to stay there forever, and why the hotel is actively trying to make them part of itself. Really cool idea, really cool story. Basically, an idea of something this old with this much history, this much backstory, gains a life of its own over time. Really interesting. Now, the story starts where Jack Torrance is accepting a job as a caretaker at a hotel called the Overlook Hotel in Sidewinder, Colorado, which is actually a made-up town. The real Overlook Hotel is in Estes Park, Colorado, right by Rocky Mountain National Forest. We actually went and visited there. I'll show you a couple pictures here real quick. And I found this to be one of the coolest settings because you're up in the mountains, isolated. It's good, snow is coming, kind of, winter is coming, kind of ideal, where you're gonna be stuck. You're gonna be stuck in this moment, in this darkness, this oppressiveness. Winter always feels that way to me. Maybe it's because I'm from Florida. It just always gives me that sense of, oh my gosh, what if we can't get out? What if we can't do something? And that's exactly what's going on in this story. They get stuck because they're 40 miles away from the closest town in this very beautiful hotel that overlooks the Rocky Mountains, but they're finding themselves trapped here because the hotel wants them. They very interesting ways that he used an elevator, which I liked. He used hedge animals. He used an empty bar. Fantastic ways that he used that. Now, right at the beginning, we learn the hotel has a very dark past. Starting in page 9, the manager of the hotel actually tells Jack Torrance, "During our first winter, I hired a family instead of a single man. There was a tragedy, a horrible tragedy. I made a mistake. I admit it freely. The man was a drunk." Jack felt a slow, hot grin, the total antithesis of a toothy PR grin stretch across his mouth. "Is that it? Am I surprised Al didn't tell you that I've retired?" "Yes, Mr. Shockley told me you no longer drink. He also told me about your last job, your last position of trust, shall we say." He hit a student, almost killed him. He says, "During the winter of 70-71, I had the hotel refurbished before our first season. I hired Dilbert Grady. He had a wife and 2 daughters. I had reservations. The harshness of the winter season, and that Grady would be cut off from the outside world for 5 to 6 months." Well, that's not really true. There are telephones here. There's probably a Citizens Band radio as well. And Rocky Mountain National Park is within helicopter range. The hotel does have a 2-way radio, he says, but Mr. Watson will show you that. And it goes into the story how Dilbert Grady murdered his wife and his 2 daughters and then committed suicide. Sorry, it's a squirrel. And you start to see the dark past of this hotel coming out really early. Now, with Jack being a recovering alcoholic, that really means a lot that Ullman knows that he was an alcoholic. And there's no alcohol in the hotel. And that's a big important part of the story too, where Jack starts getting these symptoms of what he used to do when he was an alcoholic. He wipes his mouth a lot, wipes his mouth so much that he was bleeding. That was something he did when he was drunk. He chews Excedrin and kind of gives him like a mental high, kind of get over his hangover kind of thing. And so Jack is really struggling. He's diving back into alcoholism without ever drinking any alcohol. The hotel is using that against him, that addictive nature that he has, and trying to pull him into the hotel. And Jack has a temper. I told you about he lost his last job because he almost killed a student. He also, while he was drunk, grabbed his son by the arm and went to spank him and broke his arm. I don't know how many of you are parents, but there's times as a parent when if you spank your children, you are frustrated and you come into that situation a little too amped up, and it's scary when you look back on it. You go, man, I should have been calm and collected. I should have never been angry. And for somebody who has an anger issue, I could imagine it's so much worse. There have been moments when I've spanked my child and been very regretful later because I feel like I spanked them too hard because I was angry at the time. So I can see where he was drunk and angry, he broke his arm. I'm not making excuses for him, but I understand where that mentality comes from, and I understand how dangerous that could be to have an anger problem and be an alcoholic on top of that. It could really hurt your family. And you can see genuine regret in Jack Torrance when he did this. He has genuine regret after he gets done being angry. And that feels so common. That feels like something that is real. And King really brought that to the forefront of this story. I think he really made that part of this story that was really impactful. I looked at my interactions with my children and I thought I should not yell so often. That's really my vice. I get angry and I yell, and I feel like the kids don't listen to me if I don't yell. I feel like I am trying to be nice and I ask politely and I go, guys, I need you to do this. You have this chore to do. You have this to do. You have this to do. And until I start yelling and get angry, they don't listen. And so I understand, not to the level that Jack Torrance did, obviously. I mean, he was not a good man, but I understand how much, how easy it would be to fall down that path. And you look at Danny. Danny loved his father. He loved his father so much in this story. Danny wanted, and it's something that we have in our family too, where both the kids want to spend time with me. And I think it's because they spend more time with their mom. So when I'm home, I want to spend time with Dad. I want to see Dad. I want to see what Dad's doing. I want to go check out what Dad's doing. And I love that. But it causes a rift between me and my wife where she, I think, at times gets a little bit jealous. And I think a lot of moms probably feel that when it's like, well, I spend the time with the kids. I'm the consoler. I'm the comforter. A lot of the times the dad's not even all that nice, but the kids gravitate to them. And I think that's part of being a father that we sometimes take advantage of. Sometimes we don't give enough merit to, where as a father, you have this level of leadership with your children that nobody else can have. That as a father, you are so important to your children's lives that no one else, not a teacher, not a pastor, not anybody can have that level of influence in your children's lives that a father does. And I think it's so, as a father, reading this story, I really looked back into myself and thought, how can I be better at being a dad? How can I, even though I think I'm a really good dad, I think I do a very good job at raising my children. I think I'm a loving and caring father. There's definitely things that I can work on. And this book brought a lot of those things out. Interactions where you go, I could have handled that better. I could have been more caring. I could have been more compassionate. I could have put down the thing I was doing, work project, working on the lawnmower, doing whatever I was doing, and stopped and talked to my kid and said, tell me what's going on with you. Tell me what's going on in your life. Because there's a lot of times that Danny was really giving him, and I'll talk about Danny a little bit more, he was giving him all of the signs and saying, Dad, this is bad for us. We need to leave here. We need to be out of here. This is not a good place for us. And Jack was so focused on something that I focus on a lot too, is I need this job. I have to have this job. I'm in a place right now where work is tough, but I know that I can't quit my job, and I don't really want to, but I'm stressed out. I come home and I've brought that home with me. And Jack feels responsible for the hotel, and the hotel uses that against him and says that Danny never really cared about the hotel, and Wendy never cared about the hotel, and really digs its claws into him that way, saying that you're a good caretaker. We want you. We want you to stay here. And I found that so interesting, so enthralling to see that parallel there. Um, so I'll jump into Danny. I want to talk about Danny. So Danny has this ability. I talked about it earlier, called The Shining. There's a cook. He's kind of an older black man, and he immediately connects with Danny. Like when they get to the hotel, they've stockpiled the kitchen with food, and so the manager Ullman, he has Wendy go talk to the cook, chef. What's his name? Helleran. Sorry, it took me a minute to find that. Helleran is the cook. He's I think he's in his early 60s. He's a black guy. You get a little bit of his backstory, but it really comes in late in the book, where the hotel tries to use him being black against him. That might be a spoiler. I don't know. I don't. Probably not. I'll leave it in. And so Dick Hallorann is able to look at Danny and realize Danny can shine. Like, he shines hard. Like, everything Danny does projects. And so that's one of the things that he is warning Danny about. He actually pulls Danny to the side and he's like, I can tell that you can shine. And he kind of explains a little bit about how him and his grandmother used to be able to have conversations without ever speaking any words. And he said most mothers can kind of shine until their kids get a little bit older enough. They got to pick up on what their kids are trying to tell them, right? And so, but he says, Danny, you shine more than anybody I've ever seen in my life. And this hotel is probably going to show you stuff, bad stuff. There's been bad stuff that happened here. And he warns him not to go certain places. He warns him, it's not real. These things that you see, they're not going to be real. And Danny does start to see these things because he has the shine. He's got this imaginary friend, Tony. And Tony is really important to the story. I don't want to go too much more into it if you haven't read it. If you've read it, you know what I mean. Tony is an imaginary friend, sorta, but he really shows him about the world. He shows him what's going on. He shows him things in places where he's never been. He gives him. He's kind of Danny's conduit to the shining, to shine. You know what I mean? And so when Tony shows him stuff like red rum, which is real important to the story. I'll kind of give you a little bit of a clue here on what Danny can kind of do here. I'm going to go into page 37. You guys are really early on. So he's talking about, they'll believe me about Tony. It's too bad they couldn't believe more. Though, especially at times like now, Mommy was lying in her bed in the apartment, just about crying that she was so worried about Daddy. Some of the things she worried about were too grown up for Danny to understand. Vague things that had to do with security, with Daddy's self-image. Feelings of guilt and anger, feelings of what was to become of them. But the two main things on her mind right now was that Daddy had a breakdown in the mountains, then why doesn't he call, and that Daddy had gone off to do the bad thing, drink alcohol. And he knew a lot about the idea that they thought about getting a divorce before Jack took this job. And that was big in his mind. And now he's not so worried about divorce because they've kind of patched things up a little bit when Jack has quit drinking. But he can even look at, he looks in on his dad. He focuses on his dad. And he's like, oh, Dad's thinking about, he needs to add some new shingles to part of the roof at the hotel while he's being the caretaker. And he's like, I need to buy bug bombs and things like that. So he literally can reach into other people's minds, and he tries not to, but he can reach in and feel what other people are thinking. And it's a huge part of what Danny can do here. As much as I'd like Wendy to be more of a character, really all she did was bridge the gap between Jack and Danny. Jack and Danny were the main characters, and Wendy was Danny's protector, and she was the jealous party of their relationship. And so a lot of Jack's anger as they go through the book is focused on Wendy, and it's kind of the idea of when a divorce happens, the dad says, well, your mom's turning you against me, and that rears its head. Kind of the idea of she's telling you bad things about me, right? So if you've watched the movie, it's its own thing. I watched the movie for Halloween back in October, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good movie. It's not the best horror movie I've ever seen. It's definitely not. But it was one of those where I understand why people love it so much. It's interesting. It has the right level of creepiness. The bike riding scenes on the carpet were perfect. The actors did a really good job. Well, Wendy didn't do the best job. She played Olive Oil in the Popeye movies, which I'll always think of her as that person. But and so with that, I think if you've watched the movie, read the book too, because it gives you a whole different perspective. Different characters do different things. Different conclusions are made at the end. The hedge maze is a huge thing in the movie. It's not in the book at all. So the whole ending is different. They're hedge animals instead of a hedge maze, which is kind of cool. Oh, birds. And so King does this thing, and I've noticed it. I don't know how many King books you guys have read, if you've read any, or if you're just watching my review, getting ready to read this one as your first one, The Shining. He will telegraph what's going to happen in the book. He will basically lay out for you a possible scenario that could or could be our devastating outcome, right? Sometimes he's even said, like, he won't live much longer, and stuff like that, where it's like, dude, you're giving it away. But he builds such great characters through the story that it doesn't really matter that you know what's going to happen at the end. And he kind of does that here in page 46, where he talks about this is an image that Tony is giving Danny right after he kind of talks to his dad mentally, where he kind of feels what his dad's doing. And he talks about Tony shows him signs all the time, like road signs and do not enter sign, no swimming, that kind of thing. So this is right after that. This is page 46. They faded. Now he was in a room filled with strange furniture, a room that was dark. Snow spattered against the windows like thrown sand. His mouth was dry, his eyes like heart marbles. His heart trip-hammering in his chest. Outside there was a hollow booming noise, like a dreadful door being thrown wide. Footfalls. Across the room was a mirror. Deep down in its silver bubble, a single word appeared in green fire. That word was red rum. The room faded. Another room. He knew. Would know. This one. An overturned chair. A broken window with snow swirling in. Already it had frosted the edge of the rug. The drapes had been pulled free and hung on their broken rod at an angle. A low cabinet lying on its face. More hollow booming noises. Steady, rhythmic, horrible, smashing glass. Approaching destruction. A hoarse voice. The voice of a madman. Made the more terrible by its familiarity. Come out, you little bad word. Take your medicine. Crash, crash, crash. Splintering wood, a bellow of rage and satisfaction. Red rum, coming, drifting across the room. Pictures torn off the walls. And then it kind of ends, because Danny doesn't want to keep seeing this vision. But he's giving you this, there's going to be terror. It's coming. You just have to wait for it. You have to wait for it. And then the sense of foreboding that comes and comes and comes and comes. Really, really cool. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I hope you guys give it a check out. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to, follow me on Goodreads. Please join the Discord. There's wonderful conversations going on about books and any other things. I love to post a lot of fan art. I'd love to see any fan art that you guys have come across or drawn yourself. Check out some of the read-alongs we're doing too. There's some really good ones in there. Lost Fleet is really, really good. Hyperion coming up soon. So I hope you enjoy reading a book soon, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.